Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of Spin Cycle, the show for reviews of music, new and old, depending on what I'm listening to, what I want to talk about. And today I'm going to be talking about Katatonia's new album, The Fall of Hearts. So, just to kind of give a little background on where this album came from, and for those of you who aren't familiar with Katatonia, on this show I talk about a lot of music that's not necessarily popular in America, so a lot of Americans might not know about them. Katatonia is a Swedish band. They've been around for a long time. They've been around since the early 90s, basically, through different sort of sounds that they've gone through. They started out as a death metal band, kind of worked their way into a little bit more doomier, doomy metal, and then more into progressive metal, alternative metal, even to the point where some are saying that their new album isn't as much metal as it is rock, but I'll get into that. So, The Fall of Hearts, which is their 10th studio album, is kind of had some little bit of contention in order for it to come to life. The band has gone through a number of lineup changes since their last album. Basically, the guitarist and the lead singer are the only two members of the band who've been pretty much constant since the formation of Katatonia back in the 90s. They've been around forever, but the band has seen a number of lineup changes, and in the past few years, since the release of their previous album, they've had to basically find a new bassist, a new drummer, and a new guitarist, rhythm lead guitarist as well. One of the things about this album is that I was hoping for it to be a worthy follow-up for Dead End Kings. Now, I'm going to admit something here. I am a late bloomer when it comes to being a Katatonia fan, but once I discovered them and discovered how awesome they were, they became a staple of my listening. Like, I listen to Katatonia all the time. And part of the reason was because of Dead End Kings. That album was fantastic. Granted, it's way less metal than some of their older stuff, but that doesn't change the fact that it is just a solid album with some amazing tracks on it. I'm sure I'll do a review of it sometime, when I just need to gush about how much I love that album. But aside from it being a personal favorite, in that 4-year gap between Dead End Kings and The Fall of Hearts, we're hoping for something, kind of in that same vein. I'm sure there's long-time fans of Katatonia who are wondering, are they ever going to go back to the way they were at the beginning? And the answer to that is going to be a resounding no. But that doesn't mean that the band is not progressing and making amazing music. Because it's been this kind of gradual progression into more melodic doom metal, progressive metal, even just melodic progressive rock. So here we have The Fall of Hearts. It's a 13-song album, 12 really on the actual release, 13 in the deluxe edition gets an extra song. I know there's a few other editions that are out there that have a couple extra songs, but pretty much the base album is 13 songs, that I'm going to call it 13 songs, because I'm going to add the one song they added for a reason, but I'll get there. So here's the album. It's features their new lineup, the new drummer, guitarist, and bassist. I can't pronounce any of their names because I don't know Swedish names very well, and I would hate to butcher. I'm going to butcher one of their names anyway, but once again, this album is a bit of a departure from their old sound, and even somewhat a departure from the albums prior to Dead End Kings. When you look at The Great Cold Distance and Night is the New Day, those two are really dark and melancholy albums. And so the sound that they've gone it's still dark, it's still melancholy, but not nearly as weighty as those albums were. Those albums were really doomy, whereas these albums have a little less, they're a little bit more, I should say, melodic than those albums. Not to say those are bad albums. In fact, Night is the New Day I love that album. Absolutely fantastic album. And The Great Cold. I just love Katatonia. That's all I can say. But one of the things I've noticed about The Fall of Hearts, getting back to on topic here, is how similar the sound is to Opeth, which is interesting because obviously Michael Åkerfeldt was in Katatonia for a time. He actually, if you don't know who that is, Michael Åkerfeldt is basically the brainchild of, the mind behind Opeth. He's the guitarist, composer, the singer. He's been, basically Opeth has been his baby since the 90s. But he was working with the two guys from Katatonia, and Katatonia was a side project, so that's why people like Ackerfeld could come in here and work with that. And then they went out and worked together on Bloodbath, and so basically the sound here reminds me a lot of some of Opeth's music, and specifically albums, kind of in the what I call the glory days of Opeth, when they had like Still Life and Ghost Reveries, and those albums. I mean, just the amazingness that Opeth brought to the sound. You can actually hear some of that here in Katatonia's new album, which is kind of nice to hear at the same time, because it takes those melodic aspects of Opeth almost and puts them into this sound, which is really cool. It's very proggy, very doomy. I shouldn't say very doomy, but it's kind of a proggy doom. And it's almost more rock than metal, and that's not meant to be a criticism. I obviously am a metalhead, but that doesn't mean that I don't appreciate things that are not metal, things that are a little bit more rock, alternative, hard rock sound. There are some songs on here that are definitely like metal type of songs, and you can just really hear it in the aggressiveness in the sound. Not to mention the lyrics in a lot of these things, but the sound is a little bit, like I said, I keep using proggy, but that's because it is. It's really a progressive type of album. But to be fair, I mean, versus what we've heard in the past from Katatonia, I really think that the sound that they have here, it almost feels like this is the sound that Katatonia has been looking for a long time. That isn't to say it's not going to change, which it very well could, but this one it sounds so perfect. It suits Jonas Renckse's voice so well. The lead singer of Katatonia. It suits his voice so well. And it's so, like, listening to the songs on this album, you can tell this is almost like what they really wanted to get to. It's like Dead End Kings was, if you think about it, Dead End Kings was testing out this kind of, prog rock sound a little bit, and then this album, which has a little bit more, guitar work and technical prowess than Dead End Kings, I think, actually builds it up even more. So the album has received generally favorable reviews. If you were to take the aggregate score, it's pretty good, which I would disagree with, but maybe that's just because I absolutely adore this album, and for a few reasons. One, it's contemplative. That's the thing about Katatonia's last string of albums is they're contemplative, they're dark, they're the kinds of albums you like listen to when you want to think and you want to explore your own consciousness in a way. This album really highlights that sort of mindset that you can get into, and it's complex. The music is not. There isn't a song on this album that is a radio song, and what I mean by a radio song is something that is just a very, the generic system. You have the hook, the refrain, the next, the second verse, the refrain, maybe a solo, and then the refrain, and that's it. I mean, it's a pretty standard song. I mean, most songs go by this, and that's not to criticize those songs. It's just to say that they don't, you kind of know what you're getting with songs like that. Whereas with this album, there's not a single song on here that is a single. It's all very complex music, and I think that adds to why it's such a powerful album from start to finish. Because it blends their dark and melancholy sound that they've had forever, the Viva Emptiness type of stuff, that they just throw that at you, but they add some technical prowess to it that we really haven't heard from them, at least in this detail. Obviously, they've always had very good guitar work, very good orchestrations, but in this one, you can really tell that technical prowess, which is why comparing it to Opeth is almost like it's an honor to say that, because Opeth has always had that technical prowess that just makes them so amazing to listen to. This album has a lot more guitar solos than Dead End Kings did, and unique guitar solos, not just somebody just shredding on a guitar. It's somebody doing some interesting guitar work, which just sounds amazing. Not to mention some songs do have memorable hooks. When I say there's no singles, that doesn't mean there's not a song on there that is, catchy and memorable. It just has, the formula of the song does not follow what your typical single is going to sound like. A song that, kind of brings, to mind on the album is Serene. I think I'm pronouncing that right. But that song, I think it is actually the first song that they released, has a hook in it that certainly, it's a memorable chorus, and, it really does get into your head when you think about that song. And the dark lyrics are always a draw for me. Katatonia talks about some deep stuff. They talk about some really heavy human stuff, and that's why I feel like when I listen to them, it actually puts me at ease, because it's somewhat, I can listen to somebody who's also going through the same stuff I am sometimes, which isn't always nice. It's nice. It's not depressing music in that sense. It's uplifting, because you're not the only one who's dealing with stuff, but they're finding a way to deal with it and put that as an outlet. So what about the highlights? What are the songs on the album? The opening track is called Takeover, and just right off the bat, it just, they just jump right into it. There's no build up. There's nothing. There's no real intro. It just boom, right in there. A little guitar work. Jonas's vocals just kick right in, and there you go. It's a great opening to the album, and this actually sets the tone for the album, because this is actually one of the longest songs on the album. It might be the longest song. I'd have to go back and check. And it showcases everything that this album's going to be. It showcases that there will be some aggressiveness, not a lot in the song, but there will be some faster, harder aspects to the album. There's also going to be a lot of melody, a lot of progressive sound. The whole song is so dynamic, and it's a theme. It's the best way to start the album. If you have a dynamic album like this that is not just one sound across the board, that it does, ebb and flow in how it presents the music, this song, Takeover, is like the perfect way to open it. It does that so very well. Serene, the song I was telling you about, it was just the first single off the album. That one is just, it's a memorable song. It has a great hook in it. It's one that, occasionally I get the lyrics in my head, because it just kind of brings you back. And again, the lyrics are so good on this album. There's the 13th song, which was the bonus song, is called Vakaren. And this is actually, it might be Vakaren, I don't know Swedish, but this song I was so happy that they put on here, not just because it's a great song, but because the lyrics are in Swedish. I can't stress enough how much it annoys me when bands are not able to sing in their own native language, because people think that it has to be in English for anybody to appreciate it. When I talk about Volbeat's new album, I guarantee that's going to be one of my sticking points, but we'll get there. But it's great to hear a song in Swedish, because it conveys the message even differently than how it would be in English. And it's still just as beautiful and just as amazing a song. So I always love hearing songs in native languages, which is why listening to bands like Eluvite and Korpakani, bands like that, are always great to listen to, because they don't always sing in English. They sing in their native tongue, and it's always cool to hear. So, Old Heart Falls is another great song. It's very smooth, but also quite doomy, which that one also has some really good hooks in it that get you, draw you into that sound that they produce. Sanction, this one is one of the more aggressive songs on the album, which is kind of a nod to not original Katatonia, but certainly some of the older Katatonia, which is great to get some of that aggressive. Always like a good song that will get your blood up too. Last Song Before the Fade. Now this is the one that really, of all the songs on the album, I think was so reminiscent of Ghost Reverie's era Opeth. It just has certain sounds in it that remind me of that album, which is arguably my favorite Opeth album to begin with, Ghost Reveries, that is. And this song has some of that kind of the sound in it. Not to say that they stole it, but it certainly is inspired in sort of that era. Very awesome song as well. But my favorite song on the album has got to go to Serac. And I don't know why I love this song so much, but it is so good, and it just gets. This is another one of those songs that is so dynamic and touches on so many aspects of the album, of what the album is. It has aggression, it has feeling, emotion, it has power, some symphonic power in it as well, and it just. When it ends, you're like, oh, I want more. I want that song more. I've listened to that song so many times. It's such a great song. And absolutely my favorite on the album. Although, the other ones I've listed, this is an album that you can start and finish, and by the time you're done, you're like, I'm going to do it again. I'm going to listen to it again. It's from start to finish, this is a solid album. Overall, it's nearly flawless. And that's hard to say when it comes to, a band that's been around as long as they have and has done so much. To say that a new album that they're releasing is nearly flawless, that's an achievement. And Katatonia is one of those bands that has so much range in them that to be able to produce something new and something just absolutely special like this is fantastic. And I highly, highly recommend this album, especially if you're a metalhead. But if you're not, if you're into like kind of rock and progressive type music, you will probably enjoy this as well. It's not just for metalheads; it's for anybody who appreciates a good sound. And I think this album has a fantastic sound. So that is my review of The Fall of Hearts, and I definitely, absolutely think you should check it out. So what am I listening to this week? My top 5 for this week, aside from Katatonia, which I've been listening to a ton. I've also been listening to a lot of other random music. It's been kind of a weird week. But here are the top 5 songs that have been, kind of replaying on my list this week. Walls of Jericho's "Relentless." That song, it just is. Their album, that album as a whole is fantastic. I will do a review of that one for a number of reasons. But the song "Relentless," I don't know why this week it just hits me, but this week it really does kind of the opening riff of that song really is just like playing over and over in my head. It's kind of like my battle anthem this week, so that's a good one. Heart's a Mess by Missy Higgins. That's another interesting song. It was at the end of an episode of Wentworth, and it just is a good, like, kind of jazzy, dark song. Silvera by Gojira off of their new album, Magma. That's a great album as well. Gojira's new album. Certainly a little, not as, it's a bit different than what they've done in the past, but Silvera is certainly reminiscent of what Gojira has given us over the years. So just a great song. It's a great album. Megadeth's new album, Dystopia, one of the songs off there has really been getting into my head too. The Threat Is Real. That's just another fantastic, like, classic Megadeth song, reminiscent of stuff you get on Rust in Peace or, Countdown to Extinction. So it's a fantastic song, really aggressive and fun. And then Metallica's Lords of Summer. It's so freaking hot here right now. It's like, I figure I gotta listen to some kind of, like, summer-related song, so why not Metallica's Lords of Summer? Which, just like, sounds very much like a Death Magnetic song, which, not bad. It's got a great guitar solo in it. But, we'll see how Metallica's new album comes out this year. We'll see if it comes out this year, but it should. So that's my review of Katatonia. That's my episode of Spin Cycle for this week. I will see you next week, and enjoy the music. Rock on.